Now, details have been released of the first hostage deal between Hamas and Israel. 50 of the captives will be freed in exchange for Palestinian prisoners and a pause in fighting.
That's expected to last 4 days, during which aid will be let in. Now, overnight, US President Joe Biden has welcomed the agreement and thanked the leaders of Qatar and Egypt for helping broker it.
Well, joining us is the Deputy Editor-in-Chief of the Jerusalem Post, Zvika Klein. Zvika, thank you so much for joining us this morning. What else do we know about this announcement about hostages?
Yeah, so basically last night, the Israeli government approved this deal, as you mentioned, 50 hostages within 4 days, approximately 10 to 12 each time, day by day. Every evening, Hamas will announce who the hostages are. And as you mentioned, just women and children at this point. We're not talking about men, mainly mothers, but also women who are not mothers will be freed. There was a very big and heated discussion last night, as we see on the screen in the Israeli government. There were two parties that initially were against the deal because basically, as mentioned, releasing 140 prisoners, security prisoners in Israel back to the Palestinian Authority or to Gaza is something that they saw as something that was problematic security-wise. But at the end of the day, only one party voted against in the government, so it was pretty much, almost a consensus that this deal has to move forward.
Zvika, thanks for joining us on Talk Today. Interesting to get your perspective. Of course, Netanyahu came out straight away last night and said this is not the end. These hostages, there'll be a pause, 50 and another 10 for every day, but we will take out Hamas and we want all the hostages back. We have, though, seen growing protests inside Israel calling for a concentration on hostages. Is this an example of the Israeli people being listened to by their government?
No, I don't think so. I think a majority of Israelis agreed to this deal and agreed for it to move forward. I mean, even parties that are considered to be on the extreme right or far right voted for the deal. And yes, there are those that are, I would say it's a minority of Israelis that feel that Israel should have fought in a more strong way. We live in the Middle East. Sometimes people forget, we perform in Eurovision, but at the end of the day, the Middle East is not Europe and it's not the US. And we have neighbors that are, Muslim countries that are very different than the neighbors of European countries. And therefore, the feeling of those Israelis you mentioned demonstrating was that Israel needs to fight in a stronger way in order to get Hamas to, be in a more difficult situation, and maybe then it would be easier to bargain for the entire group of hostages.
Am I right in saying then that in exchange for these 10 hostages, 12 hostages per day, 150 Palestinian prisoners would be released? They will be women and minors, though. Can you explain to me why Israel is keeping children as prisoners?
Again, it's not really necessarily minors. Could also have been when they committed a crime. We're not talking about children, under the ages of 16. But yes, it is a situation where people were threatening lives of Israelis, and therefore they were detained or arrested and put in Israeli jails. But we're not talking about, in the deal where Israeli hostages are being freed, we're talking about children at the ages of 3 or 9 months who were actually taken from their beds at 6:30 in the morning, while some of them even had their parents killed in front of their eyes. So this is a very different situation. We're talking about people who violated a law.
I understand that,
but
you talk about
people who are just citizens.
You talk about
Sorry?
a security threat. The reason, there were concerns about these Palestinian prisoners being released back to Gaza or the West Bank because of security concern. I was just wondering what kind of security concerns a minor would pose against the Israeli government.
It's not against the Israeli government. It's against the Israeli citizens.
I see.
Minors have stabbed and shot Israelis or have tried to commit terror attacks, as well as women.
Can I ask you a question, Zvika? And I think it would be fair to say, I said it yesterday, everybody wants their sausages home, and any person with any semblance of morality would look at some of the images and wants this done. But I will never deviate from my belief that Hamas as a terrorist organisation needs to be exterminated. However, one question, and I put it yesterday and I wouldn't get an answer from anybody. There are many people in the world, and I suspect many of the Jewish community, who would believe that you should never, ever negotiate with terrorists. I want those sausages home. You want those sausages home. What are the dangers, though, in effect, in saying to Hamas, we're going to sit round a table and talk to you? Yes, good for the hostages, but what message does that send to a terrorist organisation?
I agree. It's a very complex situation. I can tell you, I met with friends last night, and we were split. There was 4 couples, and, 2 of the couples were saying just what you were saying now. We're giving legitimacy to a terrorist organization. That is a really big problem. That said, being a nation that sees, human existence over everything, we'll do whatever we can as a country. I do not represent the government, but I think as a country and as a nation, to free any individual that we can. So this is a very big risk that we're taking. And many newspapers in Israel speak today about the fact that there's a huge risk in doing this, because we don't necessarily believe that every single thing that they're promising will actually happen. We are a democratic country, and when we make a decision, our government has to do it, or the authorities have to fill out according to an order. Here it's a terrorist organization, and there are many that see it this way. But a lot of Israelis are saying, okay, we think it's problematic, but we'll do anything we can to get civilians and just Israelis who were kidnapped and brutally, while murder was just taking over thousands of people, 1,200 people, to just bring them home. So I pray every morning, and I pray this morning that, all these children and women and men who really did not do anything will be able to reunite with their families.
Zvika,
and I can't even imagine, by the way, what the psychological, let alone, obviously medical, but the psychological
impact that's going to have on them. There will no doubt be a collective trauma in the peoples of both Israel and Palestine for a long time to come. Thank you so much, Zvika Klein,
Thank you, Zvika,
for joining us.